Something so new. Oh la la, oh la la. Won't you tell me? Save me. Won't you tell me?
Good morning and welcome to the Standing Committee's meeting for Wednesday, May 7th, 2025. All council meetings will be live streamed on the city's website, and for guest speakers joining us at the table, please do not turn off your microphones. Our first order of business is roll call. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Mr. Sharland.
Here.
Mr. Coghill. Ms. Gross. Mr. Lavelle.
Here.
Mr. Mosley.
Here.
Mrs. Kell-Smith. Ms. Warwick. Mr. Wilson. Ms. Strasburger, Chair.
Here.
I'm also here, sorry. This is Councilwoman Gross.
Yes. Councilman Bobby Wilson.
6 members present.
Thank you. Our next order of business is public comment. I would like to remind all speakers that the rules of council state that comments are limited to matters of concern, official action, or deliberation which are or may be before city council. Profanity will not be permitted. Please state your name and neighborhood for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak. And our first and only registered speaker is Edward Wren.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. I apologize for having missed giving testimony before full council yesterday. My name is Ed Wren of the Switzhelm Park neighborhood of Pittsburgh, represented by Councilmember Barb Warwick. She is the primary sponsor of the bill to amend city code to allow exceptions for vegetation other than trees and shrubs being no greater than 10 inches in height. I testify in favor of passing the bill on May 13th or postponing a vote in order to prepare a more comprehensive approach to environmentally favorable land care in the near future. I will provide expanded written testimony to supplement my remarks. I appreciate the assistance that the Audubon Society of Western PA has given in formulating the bill. However, I would also like for this council to consider input from other organizations. I'm a co-founder of the Western PA area chapter of the national organization Wild Ones Native Plants Natural Landscapes. We have a suggested native planting ordinance created by one of our volunteer, quote, wild lawyers, unquote. The Pennsylvania Native Plant Society has an extensive list of native plant ordinances in PA and elsewhere. Phipps Conservatory would be an excellent resource. PASA Sustainable Agriculture would be a good resource about incorporating edible plants into landscaping code. Strategically, I would like for the city to center land care policy on the realization that grass lawns, including those with little or no foot traffic, have little environmental benefits but may cause very serious harms, as I will elaborate on in my written testimony. I would like for the city to keep this in mind in their own operations. For example, the city often uses loud and extraordinarily polluting gasoline-powered equipment, even though electric equipment has become increasingly affordable and effective. On the other hand, native plants are essential to biodiversity in our ecosystems and can address many expensive and disrupting problems, including flooding, landslides, and urban heat island effects. They are beautiful and fascinating. Many people employed in lawn maintenance and other fields could be trained for more satisfying work in natural land care with less exposure to toxic chemicals. Thanks for your attention.
Thanks very much. There being no further registered speakers, we will now take comments from those in the audience wishing to speak. Are there any speakers wishing to come to the podium?
My name is Yvonne F. Brown. I live at 715 Mercer Street, the top of the hill. Yesterday I came and I was trying to explain, well, I did explain that walking down Carson Street the other day and noticed a trail of pennies. And as I followed the pennies, they went up, a whole bunch of money was in the doorway. All this money, all this, it's about $2 and something of nickels and dimes, and this cup. So this probably was a homeless person's cup. Well, I was trying to explain, the homeless fella stopped me and was saying, Miss Yvonne, there's an Asian cop on the south side that's beating up the homeless people. He said they were in the doorway, and I think they were asleep. But anyway, he came and assaulted them. They took their computer, their laptop, and I think a tablet. Only thing I was thinking is this: if you put them out the hallway, okay, you did, but why take their computer? Why take their laptop? That's the only thing they have. In the same way with this man probably took a while to collect this money. This was his cup, and you could tell the homeless people, I'm sorry I didn't come months ago when they told me to tell city council. But if he would come, I will give him his money back, and he can have his cup. I'm worried about where is this person and what happened to him. I know he wouldn't have automatically just left this money, not if he begged all day or whatever. You just need to look at how the homeless people are being treated in this city. And also the mayor, I have no respect for him. When they showed the police looked like they were harming the homeless person, and the mayor didn't take up for it, say something. Understand, they are still human beings. They just don't have a place to lay their head that they can call their own. I live in a place that I can call my own, but I'm being threatened. We are in a building where we got a woman that's beating the old people up. She beat a mother and daughter with a hammer. The mother dead. She also took a stick and beat the man. He was heavier than me, and he's small. And I said, why are you so small? You got to die. He said, I got cancer. My daughter said, Mommy, don't go down there telling him nothing, because it sounds like you're the troublemaker. No, I have to. My sister died with cancer, 45 years old. And like she was explaining to me, she said, Yvonne, even my bones hurt. So this man was just standing talking to another resident, where this woman that don't live in the building went down the hill, came back up with the stick, and whacked him in his head. And he was saying, why are you doing this? I'm coming down here because Jens can do something about it. And when we called the police said it's Arbor and Petit that's dropping the ball. Okay. I need to tell you more, but please help us. Please.
Thank you very much.
Sorry. Come on, baby.
Good morning, Special Agent Sunshine. How's everybody? I return the sender any voodoo hexes, curses sent towards me 100 million, billion, trillion googolplex. And whoever is sending it, Lord, please throw them into a lake of fire in Jesus' name. Dear God, thank you for loving me by providing protection against the enemy. Please help me rely on you and turn to you for help in the battle. Psalm 18:2 says, the Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. Without him, I don't know where I would be right now, but he has me here in front of you. It's amazing. Today's subject, I'm so sorry, is Pittsburgh Regional Transit CEO Catherine Egan Kellerman. Hello, how are you? Proverbs 10:16 says, the wages of the righteous brings them life, but the income of the wicked brings them punishment. Let's talk about this punishment. Right now, PRT is facing a budget deficit of $100 million starting July 1st, 2025. They're proposing there has been a proposed significant service cut, fares increase to address the shortfall. A power line went down this month. I think it was a punishment from God, because here's the situation. The technology committee was approved for $348,000 for employee validation and testing services that they don't need right now. So what do you need this $348,000 for right now? You guys think you're going on vacation too? It's the same thing here. I approved. You're approving this money and you're not using it for what it's needed for. So God brought this power line down to show you that he has power, and now you don't. You're already in deficit $100 million. It's crazy, and you want $117 million increase in state funding to maintain current service levels. Really? He's laughing at y'all. I'm so sorry he's laughing. Because I went in there to the budget, to the committee meeting, the board meeting. I went to the committee meeting, got these numbers, went to the board meeting, and asked them, when's the last time you did something for the homeless? Well, I'm homeless. Please help me. They directed me to their next meeting. That meeting was Friday. Their next meeting was Tuesday. She didn't even get me bus fare. That power line went down. Service was completely shut down. They had one train, and service was behind over 30 minutes. In Jesus' name.
Thank you.
Imagine that.
There being no further speakers, we will now move on to our standing committee's agenda. And we are going to actually skip down, because I know we have some council members who are short on time today. We're going to skip down to Land Use and Economic Development Committee first. Give everyone a minute to get there in their agenda. And that takes us to deferred papers, Bill 1284.
Bill 1284, ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code of Ordinances, Title 9, zoning, Article 3, overlay zoning districts, Chapter 907, development overlay districts, to amend Section 90704 IZO, inclusionary housing overlay district, Article 4, planning districts, Chapter 910, downtown districts, to amend Section 91001 GT, Golden Triangle District, Article 5, use regulations, Chapter 911, primary uses, to amend Section 91104, use standards, and Article 6, development standards, Chapter 915, environmental performance standards, to amend Section 91507, performance point system.
I'll defer to the bill sponsor.
Motion to hold for public hearing?
Second.
Discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of holding Bill 1284 for a cablecast public hearing, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Bill will be held for a public hearing. That moves us back to the top of the agenda, to Finance and Law Committee, supplemental new papers, Bill 1801.
Bill 1801, resolution providing for ratification and extension by the Council of the City of Pittsburgh of a declaration of disaster emergency for 30 days, thereby making the declaration effective until May 30 of 2025, in response to the severe thunderstorm of April 29, 2025 in the City of Pittsburgh.
Second.
Discussion? Councilmember Warwick.
I don't know if what extra powers does this give? I'm just kind of curious.
It's a fair question. I don't know the answer. I'd like
Yeah.
to call anyone who can answer to the table.
I think Mr. Geiger.
Good morning, David Geiger, Director of Legislation and Policy. Believe Deputy Mayor Pollack may be joining for this discussion if needed, but in short, the emergency declaration powers allow us to waive certain contracting provisions as well as move more quickly in ways that we normally can't. So I don't believe we've used the contracting powers, the expedited contracting powers, but one of the things that workers have been able to do is access private property quicker than they otherwise would have for down trees, things of that nature.
So are we, just so I'm clear when I talk to residents, so if someone has so obviously if it's a street tree, we are, well, I guess I'll like if it's a street tree, are we, coming in and helping get it out of the way? If it's on a private, but like if it's the trees on private property and falling on private property, are we intervene? Just to understand for folks when we're talking to residents.
Jake Pollack, Deputy Mayor, Director of the Office of Management and Budget.
The emergency declaration, broadly, emergency declarations authorize the waiver of certain requirements or the expediting of certain procedures. In particular, they can affect emergency procurement. There's a blanket waiver of competitive process when related to disaster response activities. However, in this case, the primary reason for the declaration of the emergency and the extension relates to the documentation of disaster response activities for potential future financial support for either from the state or federal government. So the assessment is done by the Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. They begin assessing damage and documenting it in the immediate aftermath of the storm. That analysis is ongoing. Thus far, they've primarily been assembling documentation, and then as the emergency response activities conclude, they'll begin analyzing that documentation for the purposes of submitting reports to PEMA and potentially FEMA. We don't yet know whether the costs associated with the storm response will qualify for aid, but the emergency declarations are an important prerequisite to being in that position. In terms of utilization of powers provided under an emergency declaration, the two examples that I can provide right now, I believe these are the only two instances where those have been used, is the waiver of fees for residents to drop off yard waste at our yard waste collection locations throughout the city as folks are cleaning up trees and other debris on their own property, and a limited city worker activity on private property where a downed tree is both blocking the right-of-way or otherwise imperiling public safety or the storm response, but where the tree itself is a privately owned tree that we wouldn't normally engage with. So under normal circumstances, if a tree is in the middle of your front yard, it falls, responsibility for clearing that tree would be on the property owner. Mm-hmm. Under these circumstances, if that's the case and it is only affecting your property, we're still not having city workers engage in that work, although Team Rubicon, an outside nonprofit agency that assists with disaster response, is available to do that work. But where a privately owned tree falls into the right-of-way or in some other fashion is creating a health and safety risk under the emergency declaration, we're allowed to do some work on across that line.
Okay, that might be helpful just about the trees, because I know a lot of people are just sort of like,
yeah,
I have this giant tree and it's just, I had a tree fall, not in this storm, but previously, and it was a small tree, and I think I paid something like $2,000, and it was a very small tree, so.
Yeah,
I don't know, I hope I didn't, Councilman Coghill, I hope I didn't
just to emphasize, for general awareness, all Allegheny County residents, not just City of Pittsburgh residents, who have had trees fall or that type of damage on their property that is not being addressed by emergency responders because it's not imperiling the power lines or the right-of-way, they should call or can call 211 or go to pa211.org, and they'll be connected with an operator. If they explain to them that that's the issue they're dealing with, that information will be sent to Team Rubicon, who will then come out and do an assessment.
Okay. And then the other question I had, because someone asked me about this and I wasn't sure, has Governor Shapiro declared a state of emergency?
No.
And is that something that would like him to do? Would that be helpful to? I mean, I know that there's just a handful of folks, but people still don't have power.
The Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency, PEMA, has their own criteria for assessing when the state should declare an emergency. It's my understanding that those have not been met. It's a decision whether or not to declare a state of a Commonwealth level state of emergency. Is a decision for them and something that they undertake under their own criteria. So at this time, the local emergency declaration at the city level and the county has also declared one were deemed appropriate based on our emergency response agencies for the purposes of our own response. The state determination is up to them.
And I guess one last thing, and this is not something that I've asked, but I've had a few residents mention it, is because it has been so long at this point, would it be possible for neighborhood services or something like that to go and actually do maybe some door knocking in these like small sections where people have not had power now for, gosh, 8 days? Yeah, just to, even if it's not something that we can like do anything with getting the power on, just to kind of say, you know,
Yeah.
we're here, is there anything, just to make sure that everybody, I mean, I think people do, at least in my district, I think people do have what they need, but just to kind of be 100% sure.
It's not something that Neighborhood Services specifically has done. There have been coordinated efforts of community-based and volunteer organizations doing some of that work. That's something I can certainly take back.
Okay.
By way of an update, and this is Duquesne Light's update, but not ours, but their latest estimates are that of individuals who lost power last Tuesday. As of last night, only 1,000 in their entire service area were still without power. So 1,000 folks, they did not meet the restoration time they had planned out for last night, and those folks should be reactivated by tonight. So they will have their power back on by tomorrow. There are, again, according to them, an additional 5,000 individuals who lost power at some point later in one of the subsequent rain events, again, across their service area, who also have a estimated recovery time of 11:30 p.m. tonight. So their projection is that they came 6,000 customers total short of their estimate, but that they expect every one of those to be addressed today.
Okay. And I don't actually know, like on Phillips Place and Beechwood, I have not checked in this morning yet, so I don't know if they're on or not. Is it on?
It will be today.
It will be tonight, right? Okay.
Yeah, everyone should be restored sometime today, according to Duquesne Light's estimates.
Got it. Okay, I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Councilman Coghill, followed by Councilman Mosley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Morning, David, Jake, how are you? Just a couple of clarification things while I was out there in the field, I guess you could say, over a couple of days there of the storm. We are not responsible for any tree from city property, whether it's a city paper street, whether it's city property, whether it's a park. If it falls on to somebody's home, we have no liability there, right? It's their homeowners or their car, or is that accurate?
If it comes from a park, I believe. Let me get you a firm answer. I believe those individuals could submit claims. The more common issue is a tree on private property falls on the same property and does damage, or falls across a property line onto a neighbor's property, and those are all private disputes.
Absolutely.
That need to be handled.
Let the insurance companies battle that out. That's not our problem, right? But,
that's correct.
But if and the reason why I ask, I guess, I don't know. I'm just trying to be accurate. Being out there, I was just telling people, because I know we are not responsible or don't take responsibility for cutting trees down that are on city paper streets, for instance. No matter if they're in range of falling onto somebody's home, we don't do that as a service necessarily. They're allowed to do it. We give them permission to do it or pay for it.
The paper streets is the element of your question that I don't want to give misleading information on, because I don't know off the top of my head.
Got it. Okay. At the same time, if somebody's tree in a private property comes down on one of our dump trucks, across the hood of one of our dump trucks, do we file a claim then, obviously, with that homeowner's?
We would, it would depend on the circumstance, whether, if a falling tree it caused damage to a city vehicle, we would probably pursue that through, our self-insurance and potentially theirs. We don't do that for privately owned trees that fall in the right of way or the sidewalk, even if that requires some repair work on our part.
Got it. So that day of that storm, I was at Fiore's Pizza Shop on West Liberty Avenue. I saw it, I know him very well. He called
Sure.
me. I'm a roofing contractor. I was roof blew off, right? So I was there, and not a job for me, I said, first of all. But secondly, I worried, I was wondering, like, so they were working there that night, okay? Lights on the place, rebuilding the roof. A lot of work, very lot of work there. I was shocked. They were done probably, they're not done, but they were, under roof and dry probably within 24 hours to 36 hours, somewhere like that.
Just about, yes.
Yeah. So what is the situation now? I was worried, like, oh my gosh, you're going to call me about PLI. Something's, we condemned it, and I thought, oh my God, everything seemed to go smooth. Nobody called me. So because of the declaration of emergency, was he able to pursue that work without
it's not
permitting
related,
and stuff like that?
It's not related to a declaration of emergency, but it is related to provisions of the building code that relate to natural disasters. You are permitted to begin repair work caused by a natural disaster and have 3 days to file for the permit. So there's a 3-day grace period where you can be proceeding with work while simultaneously getting your permits.
I wish I'd have known it that day.
Yeah.
But I would have slept a lot easier, but I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to call me in the morning saying PLI stuck a blue sticker on us, we're not allowed to work, we need permits. And
we were in contact and communication with them relatively early. We did condemn the building for a time.
Well, you had to, right?
Because it was unsafe.
Right.
This is an important clarification. Condemnation does not mean the building is a dead end and must be demolished. I think sometimes people hear the term condemnation and they think that. What condemnation means is occupancy is prohibited except for work to conduct repairs, right? And so that was the state the building was in. As you said, I believe it was just about 36 hours.
Yeah, right.
They were able to install a temporary roof. Well, it's not they were able to do enough work on the roof to then have occupancy restored for the first and second floor by I believe that was Friday.
Yeah, it doesn't.
And then they reopened.
I'm thankful that that was the process. I wish, again, like I knew that way I could have probably slept better that night, but I really didn't know, and all I know is I was getting calls from other things and hoping that went smooth, so it did.
And work there is ongoing for full restoration, but they're operational while that's happening.
Right. And then, I'll say this about Duquesne Light. Emily was like a rock star for me. She picked up the phone. They're taking a lot of heat today, because responding. There were people from Alabama putting up lines in Brookline. There were people from Erie and Cleveland and every municipality that you can drive to within 24 hours probably. I don't know how far Alabama is, but, maybe they flew in. I don't know. But
they brought their own trucks. And
did they? Yeah, right. Yeah, they need to bring their equipment, right?
That's right.
So it really was an unprecedented storm. Lines down everywhere, twisted up. Frustrating thing was we couldn't, as Public Works, people were like, why can't they move the tree off the road? Well, it has to be safe, right? I mean, the lines are down, and without that clearance, so that was really the most frustrating thing, I would say. But I will say this: our Public Works crew kicked ass.
They did.
They really did.
Very true. And if I could
when they were allowed to,
If I could just add to that, I also want to extend some gratitude to the Bureau of Fire.
Yes.
Firefighters were attached to DPW crews, and in some instances, not all. In some instances, they were able to use their training to identify whether a line was hot or not, and that allowed us to proceed with some tree work before Duquesne Light was able to get to an area, which made the response quicker. If they were not able to make a clear determination, they moved on, and we did wait for Duquesne Light. But that was an important assist that we got from fire.
That's a good point. I feel like our firefighters can do anything. Even including helping out with the police department at some point, without talking about union lines or anything like that. But patrolling downtown, I'm telling you right now, our firefighters are the best. They really are. They're just good people, always looking to help, and very expertise in many fields, not just fighting fires.
They were essential as part of this response for sure.
Absolutely. So, okay, that clarifies things for me. If I can get clarification on the tree situation, I don't have that instance, by the way, which I'm glad, but it could have happened so easily. I mean,
we can find out about the paper streets present a unique example that I just don't want to be incorrect on, but we'll find that out and
I get a lot of calls, people worried that a tree on our paper street are going to fall onto their home not just during the storm, but, pretty much year long, So-
Understood.
Okay, thanks, appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilman Mosley.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to elaborate a little bit, on some of the questions that have been raised specifically around, private trees on private property. And you were saying that, folks should reach out to 211 in that instance. Could you just talk a little bit more detail for the public?
So to reiterate, a private tree that has fallen on or done damage on private property, the city is not permitted, or the county, government agencies are not permitted to go to do that work, right? The Pennsylvania Constitution has a prohibition on us competing with private business. So we are not permitted to do that work. We can only address those trees that are impacting the right-of-way or public utilities, the public benefit. However, an organization called Team Rubicon, which is a national volunteer-based emergency response organization, has responded to this disaster. They are available to assist residents with those types of situations, and they have been folded into the county, the region-wide response efforts. And so dispatching for them is being handled through 211, which is the human services resource line. So there are a lot of services available for residents through 211 at all times, in particular as a result of this storm. One of those is that if they call 211 or go to pa211.org, they can they can provide their information regarding a tree that will be routed to Team Rubicon. They will come out and do an assessment, determine whether they can be of assistance, and if they can, then a crew will help.
Okay. Thank you for that. I know we're still in the midst of it, and I can report that that I do think that those folks who were disappointed yesterday and not getting their power back on, I think today seems more favorable. My wife actually just texted me and said our power just came back on.
Congratulations.
So
Great feeling, isn't it?
absolutely. Welcome back to the 21st century.
Yeah.
Just that's a follow-up question, but actually, my next question is specifically around the emergency, declaration. You talked about, contractual flexibility that it creates. Are there any other elements that you haven't discussed that also fall within the purview of the emergency declaration beyond contractual flexibility?
If I could on that point too, I just want to make clear we've not utilized, nor do we anticipate having to utilize that contractual flexibility in this instance.
Okay.
The contracted services that the city has utilized in this storm are under existing contracts with tree service providers that we already had under contract. So there have been instances under declared emergencies where we did take advantage of that, but we've not needed to do that in this case and don't anticipate it. Generally speaking, right, the disaster response, there are broad flexibilities related to disaster response that are permitted when a disaster is declared, and the examples I use of that, like waiving of fees or making certain exceptions to standard procedures, are the powers that are extended there. I anticipate that those that we've already done seem to be the limit of what we anticipate needing to do in this disaster. Again, it's the primary role at this point is in the documentation to state and federal agencies regarding the outcomes of the storm.
And the question I was going to ask right before, my second question is, and I know that we're still in the midst of it. I just my power just came on 10 minutes ago, but just in light of what happened, are there any plans of convening with Duquesne Light and the other stakeholders and kind of having a debrief and assessing and looking at lessons learned in the process of, I don't know if we have one, on paper, but thinking about, a resiliency plan, for the region, given the reality of extreme weather events and climate change and how it's changing our region.
We anticipate if the restoration estimates hold true and the last folks who lost power in the storm are restored today, that's when we'll formally close the Emergency Operations Center, which is the disaster response and recovery portion of the effort, and begin those conversations. Again, if everyone is restored today, as we expect to be the case, that would begin tomorrow. But yes, you're correct, Councilman, that is the next step in this process. And we've begun planning for that, but I would say those conversations would begin in earnest as soon as we close down the sort of in the thick of it, if you will, phase of the response, which remains open and active until those last folks are restored.
And my last question was, and again, like many of the other members of council, shout out to Emily Yonan and Luis and the folks who are our liaisons. With Duquesne Light, and I know anecdotally, Emily, mentioned this was the worst damage they have ever experienced. Does that jibe with the conversations that you've had?
Absolutely.
With the other folks, if you talk a little bit about the sheer magnitude of this storm compared to other storms, and how it behooves us to, in the future, be more prepared, being that weather is changed. We're getting weather we've never seen in this region before.
Right. I mean, this event is not identical, but in many ways similar to last year's storm event in western North Carolina and eastern Tennessee, or 2022's major flooding in eastern Kentucky. Right. I mean, these are weather patterns that have not been typical to the Appalachian region in the past, that are happening with increased frequency as a result of climate change, and that requires significant adaptation. Right, we will need to explore ways in which our infrastructure and our response posture need to be adjusted to this new reality. There have been efforts underway in this direction. It is a focus of the ongoing work around the comprehensive plan, which also includes the development of a hazard mitigation plan for exactly that reason. But I think the lessons learned from this firsthand example will be important inputs to those ongoing efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any further discussion?
Round
Council, yeah, Councilperson Charlin, first round. And then we'll see if there's any other first round.
All right. Thank you for being here. So this brings up a really, and it's interesting, David, that you're here for this, because this is something you and I have talked about for years now. The scenario that happens all too often this time of year in my district has been happening for years, where someone, be it on abandoned property, walkaway property, whatever it might be, someone has a tree that is falling on someone else's, or looking to fall on someone else's house, and we do not have the authority to go do anything to help there. I remember calling, screaming, begging, crying to the URA, please help me, because we've got programs to help once the tree falls on someone's house. We do not have programs to help that tree from falling on someone's house. And it begs the question of, is there something we can do in terms of our emergency management powers when this inevitably will happen next year? Maybe not a storm of this magnitude, but eventually the soil will be softened, trees will start to lean, and we'll have senior citizens calling the office saying, I can't pay for a new roof. And all I can say is that, well, when you do need a new roof, we've got programs for you, but we can't help you with that tree that's about to fall over here. And sometimes we can get, the cowboy churches to go and do some illegal chainsaw work and go onto someone's property that, no one would stop them from doing. But is a method like this something that we could possibly use to prevent those situations in the future?
So
could we, is there a way to use our emergency powers for good.
I think we are already doing that. Not for the specific use case you're mentioning, which I do think is well worth considering, studying, analyzing as part of the conversations that Deputy Mayor Pollack was just mentioning that we will immediately be pivoting to over the course of the next day or so. I think that idea amongst many ideas that have been raised, and please continue to let us know as those come up. I think all of those should be considered for that sort of postmortem on this storm and future planning for resiliency, whether it's around direct emergency management or, as Councilman Mosley brought up, sort of in general, the needing to plan for, climate change and its realities for, the city of Pittsburgh and our region.
Trees specifically are going to have to be a focal point of that analysis, both the immediate aftermath analysis of this event and incorporated into planning for these types of storm events into the future, right? We're rightfully very proud of our robust and growing tree canopy. There are many cities that are not seeing the type of tree canopy growth that Pittsburgh has been fortunate to see over the last decade. But the health and condition of some of those trees clearly contributed to the amount of tree falls we had as a part of this storm. You're right, Council member, many of those trees are on private property or even in property with tangled title, which presents real unfortunate and I agree with you, very frustrating challenges as relates to property rights that are difficult to untangle. I think it is possible that there may be some relief available under the status of a declared emergency. We would need some legal guidance to further refine our understanding of that. But thank you for bringing that sort of chronic issue into the context of this example. So we can certainly include that in the analysis.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I remember talking about in your office with you as a staffer, because I was the person, talking to, the senior, trying to talk them off the ledge here. I do hope that this is the time that you do take that seriously. I do want to also offer this idea of this emergency declaration if we can enter private property. Mm-hmm. I have been on this a very different issue, but on this concept of emergency declaration because of our inability to manage trash. Mm-hmm. And is there a way that we could locally make that designation so that we could enter private property and clean up some of the constant issues that we have in our city with abandoned vacant properties that have become dumping sites?
I do want to be clear that even in our current situation, right, the limit of the intervention on private property that we're currently undertaking, and we believe is what we're enabled to do at this time, is to intervene on trees that when they were standing were on private property but are now impacting the public right of way, things that would have been challenges under other circumstances. And I bring that up to say that it would depend on the interpretation, I suppose, of the impact of something occurring on property outside of that property. Again, from a legal perspective, something that we would need more guidance on. I know we feel very comfortable and confident in the case for the types of work we're doing now to get the roadways and sidewalks reopened and assist Duquesne Light in restoring power. I don't know that emergency authority would extend as far as you're asking. I'm not saying that it doesn't. I'm saying that's a question that I can't answer sitting here today.
I would like to have clarification on what a disaster is. I think that our trash situation is a disaster by any of my residents would say that. Mm-hmm. So I would like to understand what you mean by disaster, what we actually constitute as a disaster. Obviously, this is, sometimes we learn our abilities of what we can do and what's possible through through emergencies, things like this that, that force us to open up a different part of code. I hope this is something that we can use that for, and we can, figure out how to better serve residents, in this time. I do want to go to another issue, though, that I think we've all become aware of, and that is who was in charge of the emergency management coordination?
The Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security is the primary entity within city government for managing emergency response.
And who's in charge of that?
Chief Daryl Jones is in addition to being chief of the Fire Bureau, is the emergency management coordinator, and Adam Emil is the deputy emergency management coordinator within the Office of Emergency Management.
And where was Chief Jones during this time?
In the initial, on the day of the storm, he was outside of the city for training purposes. I don't recall off the top of my head where he was. And Adam Emil, the deputy, as part of the deputy designation, led the initial opening of the Emergency Operations Center and the coordination with outside agencies.
When did he return?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
Is he here now?
Yes.
Has council been notified of this?
I'm not aware.
Okay. I am. We were not notified.
Okay.
It continues to be a problem with notifying council, with absentee letters. It's something I brought up last year, continues to be an issue now. This is exactly why we have those policies in place. I was taking calls from Lee Schmidt, which, I thought that he was running coordination for us, which could have been really helpful. But Chief Jones was not here for that.
Well, I should make a distinction, right? Like the Office of Emergency Management is part of the Department of Public Safety. So the entire staff there ultimately report to Director Schmidt, who was directly and intimately involved in every step of the emergency recovery effort, and is one of the two appointed emergency managers in the declaration of emergency, which has a different definition or criteria for what that status means. When I say that the Office of Emergency Management is the primary agency in leading disaster response, they're the conveners. They run the Emergency Operations Center meetings. They set that schedule. They are the focal point of communication between all of the agencies that participate in the EOC. So they're the clearinghouse of information, and that was a duty that Adam Emil conducted in this case in his capacity as deputy. Ultimately, the full authority for disaster response decision making runs up from the emergency management coordinator, whether that be Chief Jones or his deputy, through the normal decision making chain of command, all the way up to the mayor. As to notification, I can inquire with the Department of Public Safety. They submit those on behalf of personnel in the Fire Bureau.
Yeah, I don't know. We've had this conversation that this is a problem with this administration not notifying us when people are out of town. This is exactly why. If an emergency happens like this, we need to know who is coordinating these efforts. I applaud Director Schmidt for being, I've never had to reach out to Director Schmidt before for public works issues. He handled it. Oh, there he is. He handled it very well, and I appreciate those efforts. But as to, we have somebody whose job it is to do this, who we pay to do this, and they're out of town, and we don't know, why or how or who's in charge. So, with that, those are my questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilwoman Cale Smith, followed by anyone else for first round before we move on to second round.
Thank you. I actually brought up the question about Chief Jones yesterday for the first time, wondering where he was through the emergency management, because the response has been, there's still people without power. and there's still people without food, and there's still people struggling. And it's not just because the city, 911 went down, we had no backup plan on our own. I don't know what their backup plan was. We had people calling the stations, the police stations, but in some cases, there's not people at the police stations. So there's just a lot of communication issues, and there's a lot of communication people in your office now, but the communication issues are with us and those people, and we deal directly with the public. But what I'm going to say is that that position that Chief Jones has now was put in place, same with OMB, under Bill Peduto. And I actually think that Chief Jones does an amazing job when he's here. He's extremely knowledgeable. So I don't want to say anything negative about Chief Jones. And I think that Director Schmidt has been very responsive, extremely responsive to all of us. But for me, it's what is our plan for when emergencies happen. We have when Luke Ravenstall was in office, a 27-year-old was in office as mayor. He was slammed over Snowmageddon because he went away for his birthday for a couple days. That was Snowmageddon. It was feet of snow. It was a larger disaster all over the place, and yet people slammed him in the middle of the entire emergency. And then Natalia Rudiak at the time decided that she was going to put a plan in place for snow removal, which basically ended up being the exact plan that they were doing anyway, but now it's just a policy on paper. But it has always been their practice. Mm-hmm. So my concern is, if we're going to question somebody over, and I don't like the political part of this. I think when it comes to public safety, there's no room for politics. I mean, we really need to come together and work together on this whole thing, because the safety of the public should be our top priority. And so for me, my concern is we have never had a position before that we paid. It was always the public safety director. And I just think that the communication needs to be better between when something happens, what's going to happen, how are we feeding our residents. I mean, it's my understanding, I sent a text to Director Schmidt saying that the Salvation Army was trying to reach the city, saying that they had a lot of resources, but nobody was responding back to them. He fortunately did make sure that connection happened. And then there were, people obviously with trees and wires and all those other things. And, 3 tragedies. And, I mean, thank God there wasn't more, because it really had the potential to be much more significant than what it was. And my concern is, I think moving forward, we need to work together on plans for any type of catastrophe that could happen, any type of emergency. So, no, we can't predict everything, but we basically know floods, trees, lightning, storms, terrorist attacks are all things that are possible. So those are things that I think that we need to sit down together and work collectively on. And I think it would be helpful if all of council worked with the administration and the director on coming up with something, but also with the county, because when 911 went down, I don't know what their backup plan was.
May I address that point specifically, Councilwoman?
Yeah.
And this was a clarification that was identified on Wednesday, the day after the storm. And it's important for the sake of clarity for the public and their understanding. The 911 center itself never went out of operation. That was widely believed to be true Tuesday night for a short, brief period of time. What happened is that the number of calls that were coming in overwhelmed the telecommunication infrastructure, so some folks were not able to get through. But it is important that folks understand that the 911 center remained operational, even on backup power, the entire time. That doesn't mean that some folks were not able to reach 911, and it was during that brief window of time that that the Public Safety Department advised folks to call stations when we were hearing from residents that they couldn't get through at 911. But I just want to say, for the sake of the county, in their briefing to us the next day, that the 911 center did not become disoperational.
So I will say this, during Snowmageddon, I also volunteered my husband and I both volunteered for 311. We went to the 311 center and we just started helping. We you just wanted to pitch in as a city to help get us through a crisis. And so we went to the 311 center, but there's no center anymore. They're now working from home. And so I think, what is the backup plan if, we do need a call center? Is there some place that we could tap into that, maybe we can work with people and get people to help? I don't know all the details, so that's why I just want to have those conversations.
Sure.
But I also, the email that went out, I'll be honest with you, my husband was going through heart problems that week, and all kinds of stuff was going on. And so I thought, when I saw that text that said, or the tweet that said, to call, here's a link to call your zones for help. I panicked because I'm thinking, if he has a heart, I'm going to have to look up that number and do all this, like where I'm so used to calling 911. So I just think having some kind of other plan.
Calling the zones is the established backup response if 911 were to go down, or in a case like this, it's not down.
But as you know, we don't always have officers there at the zone. We've heard that repeatedly throughout this past year.
Yeah, I am aware of that concern, and we would need the director or the police to answer this question. I believe that the procedure is, when we are making those notifications, to ensure that there is someone there to answer the phone, even if that's not the case 100% of the time. I would like to just address your the larger context of your question, because I think it does answer many of the items that you brought up. It was an initiative of Chief Jones's to begin work earlier this year on a hazard mitigation plan, which is a standard in the emergency response practitioners. Like the emergency managers across the country have what's called a hazard mitigation plan that is intended to achieve exactly what you're saying, which is have standard response plans for these types of emergencies. Historically, the city of Pittsburgh has used the county's emergency management plan as our emergency management plan. The idea being we fold into their planning effort. This would be the first time that the city would establish its own plan, and so the questions you're asking are exactly the same questions that the Office of Emergency Management and the Planning Department are beginning to work on right now. And I think there is ample opportunity to, and it will require the engagement of all stakeholders in finalizing those plans. But they've initiated that work earlier this year. It's in its preliminary stages right now.
Okay, so I just want to say to that, I think that we should have had a plan in place. I believe we do have some plan somewhere that I remember people working on previously, so I'll try to track down something.
I don't mean to suggest that there aren't a variety of plans, standard operating procedures for disasters. We've not had a thing which has a very specific definition under FEMA regulations, which is a hazard mitigation plan. That particular document is something in which, when we file with FEMA, we say we follow the Allegheny County Hazard Mitigation Plan. That is something we're looking to change. But yes, there are numerous standard procedures, which we followed, for example, in this storm, for opening the Emergency Operations Center, pulling in all of the relevant agencies for coordination. The Emergency Operations Center met regularly, sometimes virtually because folks were in the field participating in the response, sometimes in person at the physical Emergency Operations Center on Railroad Street in the Strip District for the purposes of coordinating response activities. That included not just city agencies, but also county liaisons, representatives of Duquesne Light, representatives of the charitable or nonprofit human service agencies forgive me the example, I'm losing the example I meant to bring up, but there are numerous of those folks who participate.
What I don't want to do is belabor this point at the table right now, but I do want to have this conversation because there's a lot that I can say and a lot I want to say, and I'm not trying to make it political myself, so I would like to have that conversation at a different time. Sure. But I do think it's a conversation we all need to have.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. First round, Council Member Gross.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll keep it relatively brief. This declaration of emergency is for 30 days. I don't think anyone's actually, it was read at the title of the bill, but I just wanted to remind people because most of us were here during COVID and we voted on kind of repeating these declarations of emergency. So just as a reminder for the public, it is only for 30 days and it allows things like renting equipment, instead of waiting for, a multi-week process that goes by presenting legislation and amending a budget and getting it back to you and all that kind of stuff. So you could go out and rent equipment and things like that. It's also my recollection that early in COVID, in the previous administration, it was used to purchase questionable surveillance software. And that I later, kind of a year later, when council was asked to renew software, I said, I don't remember voting on this the first time. And the answer was, we bought it under emergency services. So what I'm looking for in this administration is that there's a commitment that there's that when you get this permission, which you have now because you have it under the first 7 weeks for the mayor can declare it, or the first 7 days, that you will not be buying services or things that are unrelated to the current emergency.
You have that commitment.
Thank you. I think we should also receive a report of what was, like a consolidated report of what was purchased.
At this point, we haven't utilized the emergency powers, to my knowledge, to purchase anything. We can certainly, if there were incidental purchases of like personal protective equipment that I might not be aware of right now, we can certainly compile that.
Right.
But
I mean, after the 30, after the emergency,
I understand.
I think there should be a record of what was purchased so that it's just, we can attach it to the public record and we can all see this was used for what it was intended for.
I wholeheartedly concur with that assessment. My broader point is we do not at this time anticipate needing to use those procurement powers for anything in this emergency. Of course, that is subject to change as we learn more about conditions. But
whatever it's used for,
Yep.
there should be a consolidated report, and that we can review it so that we can see that it is consonant with the intent.
Sure,
Perfect.
absolutely.
That's it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I know Councilman Coghill was interested in a comment second round, and so in the interim, I will just state that I'm very aware that Councilmember Warwick called for a post-agenda hearing mostly focused on Duquesne Light, and I was going to wait until after we talked to kind of understand the scope of that, but I think what I'm going to do at the end of this meeting is call for a hearing that is, I think, a slightly different topic, which is discussing what we've all been discussing here today after you've been able to go through the deep dive with Duquesne Light and understand the process and ways to improve. I think it would be helpful for us and for the public to hear the results of that discussion publicly. And so I think the hearing that I'd like to hold would be more focused on a plan for future emergency responses as climate disasters increase in frequency, and possibly even, again, dependent on what is discussed at the Duquesne Light hearing, mitigation strategies, like proactively, and then, in the moment, what the response looks like. Happy to call for that today and then cancel it if it's not necessary, if that's actually going to be included in the one that Councilwoman Warwick called for. So just wanted to state that. Little stalling tactic until we moved to second round while Councilman Coghill got back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll be brief. The emergency help that we get from Alabama, from wherever, right? Who pays for them? Do they have their own special funds? And if so, do we? Because I know we go and help also, right?
That is coordinated by Duquesne Light. So Duquesne Light has what they call mutual aid agreements with other electric utilities. They send Duquesne Light crews to respond to disasters in other parts of the country under those agreements. And then those utilities also send crews here when we have a disaster.
Perfect.
So all of that is coordinated through Duquesne Light.
Through the private utilities, we don't have to front a dime. Nobody has to deal with money going back and forth for their services. It's all done.
I don't, just for the sake of clarity, I don't know if there's cost sharing as part of those agreements between the utilities. It does not involve the city or the public.
That's all matters to me. Yeah, somebody's paying them, as long as everybody's compensated in whatever way. I'm sure they have it figured out. Not our responsibility. Got it. Okay, so The other thing was, and I was talking to Director Schmidt, which thank you, Director Schmidt, for keeping me well informed as to how things unfolded and, power lines and outages and stuff like that. I don't want to have to call you up here because I don't think you need to, but one concern I had many parts of the city of my neighborhoods were severed off, right? Couldn't get in with an automobile, couldn't get out. There's only one road in, one road out, big trees this big around that we couldn't move, we couldn't touch because we were waiting for Duquesne Light, who were overwhelmed, and the story goes on. So I did think, and I did worry about, because I was asked, and I thought, I don't know, to be honest with you, like, what if somebody took a cardiac arrest, a tenth of a mile down from where that tree came down across the road, right? Now, Director Schmidt and I talked about this, and my nerves were put to ease just by talking to him, and it's kind of what I assumed. And you mentioned our firefighters earlier. Well, if we needed to get 6 firefighters there with a stretcher, we'll get in and we'll get out and we'll get them out and we'll get them treated and the help that they need. But I didn't know if we had a broader, more like a safety plan. Like, is there a Like, do we have to do it on the whim, or is there a strategic plan in place? Whereas, and I keep using firefighters just because they're such able-bodied force that we have in this situation, crawling over, going through power lines, and trying to get somebody out of a bad situation. I don't know who else we would have to do such a thing. And my question is, do we have a plan? And I've heard other members talk about getting a safety plan in place. I'd like to have something black and white that says, yes, firefighters will be called in, or certain, whoever it might be, Army National Guard, I don't know. Yeah.
What you describe is the plan, right? So that's the reason that, or that's one of the many reasons that firefighters dispatch to those types of calls on a routine basis. And you're correct. In an instance where, the roadway is inaccessible in circumstances like these, the emergency service members, fire, EMS, police, will coordinate to evacuate someone safely, even from a place where they can't get to by a vehicle. We also documented instances where that was the case, either through visual observation from any member of the city's staff, DPW, DOME, fire, EMS, police were observing those things and reporting them in. They were then communicated to Duquesne Light through the Emergency Operations Center to be prioritized for inspection by them to get the power lines addressed so that we could then cut up the trees, right? So that there is a standard procedure, and it is exactly what you said.
Good.
We identify and know where these places are, and so we know what we'll need to respond to them until we can get them cleared, and then we also put them at the top of the priority list for clearance.
Yep. As good as our public safety is, I figured there was, but I couldn't speak exactly to it, you know, so it would be good if I had something like, so-and-so gets called first, and then if they're not available or, they're overwhelmed, then we bring in forces from here, just something more eventually, in a document, I guess, type thing that we could actually speak to. Other than PLI, which you put that to rest, which thank you, they can start, they have 3-day grace period, I guess, to apply for such permits so they don't have to wait for our process. And so other than that was the actual, again, having people severed off, and whether it's not just cardiac arrest or emergency, that situation, it's getting them water or whatever it is, so. Okay.
Right. No, it's obviously there's nothing, a natural disaster, right? We can't control which trees fall, and the ideal solution would not to not have any dead end streets, but those were decisions made a long time ago. Right. So the best we can do in those circumstances is identify those barriers quickly and eliminate them quickly.
Right, and Pittsburgh's such a great town. Like, everybody just pitches in. The neighbors pitch in.
Absolutely.
Everybody's kind of all hands on deck. At least in my neighborhoods, it's everybody's out to help each other. So, okay, that's it for me, Madam Chair. All in all, I will say, I think our public works, our public safety, did a great job, and as good a job that can be expected under those circumstances. And the same with Duquesne Light as well, I would say. They're, again, getting the brunt of they're getting beat up today by many different media outlets, but all in all, I really feel like they did as good a job as they could under
they had a gargantuan
they really did.
task.
They really did.
And I will say on behalf of the administration and just our efforts being part of the coordination. I mean the entire
Right. Yep,
team,
yep.
including public safety, public works. They were very helpful and forthcoming in the coordination efforts.
I could tell. I watched the interviews and things. So I could tell they were fully engaged and trying to just help out best they could. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further for second round? Seeing none, all those in favor of Supplemental Bill 1801, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Thank you very much. New papers, Bill 1781.
Bill 1781, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in favor of Roman Catholic Diocese of Pittsburgh, Bishop David A. Zubik for plaintiff, counsel fees and costs in connection with a litigation matter in the United States District Court for the Western District of Pennsylvania for an amount not to exceed $168,500 over 2 years.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 1781, please indicate by saying aye.
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 No.
One no. Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1782.
Bill 1782, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in favor of Taisha Somerville in an amount not to exceed $5,625 over 1 year in full and final settlement of a claim for damage to her parked vehicle from a city environmental services vehicle on December 20th, 2024.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 1782, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1783.
Bill 1783, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in favor of 239 42nd Street LLC in an amount not to exceed $3,231 over 1 year in full and final settlement of a claim for damage to their property at 417 North Millville Avenue from a city police vehicle on June 24th, 2024.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 1783, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1784.
Bill 1784, resolution authorizing interdepartmental transfers in the amount of $647,228.63 from the Department of Human Resources and Civil Service to the Department of Public Safety, Bureau of Administration, the Department of Public Works, Bureau of Operations, Bureau of Environmental Services, and Bureau of Facilities, the Department of Parks and Recreation, and the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. These budget-neutral transfers are necessary to properly align funding associated with the recent Service Employees International Union 668 and American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees 2037 contract ratifications.
Second.
Second, I'd like to ask Chief Cornell to come up and elaborate on this a little bit. He was very helpful in informing me a little bit about the details of this, and to the extent possible, I'd like for him to share that with the rest of council as well.
Sure, thank you. Patrick Cornell, Chief Financial Officer. This bill moves monies, already budgeted, already council-approved dollars within the Department of Human Resources and Civil Service to the various departments where employees who are part of 3 different labor groups work. We recently finished and came to successful terms with SEIU 668. They now represent 2 different groups, our recreation and park ranger employees, and also our crossing guards. And then AFSCME 2037 represents our foremen and forewomen, for people who supervise workers in DOMI and DPW. What we have in front of you is a bill that basically realigns the amounts that have been budgeted and set aside for bargaining. You know, we knew that we had not finished. Things were still moving through the process by the end of the year last year. So what we are doing is, now that we have come to terms, making sure that the monies that are available are where they need to be to hit in the right places for payroll in the financial system. These employees are receiving already their new wages and rates, excuse me. But this is more of the back end accounting to make sure that it reflects appropriately.
And so we have what amount in the budget and what amount are we transferring?
So we set aside $1.5 million. Most of that is in HR, some of that is in each of the individual departments. And we are only moving for 2025, which is the legally appropriated year, $650,000. So we, across the 5 years, all 3 agreements came in within what we set aside for bargaining. Some of them will be a little bit more than that amount in the last years. So the monies will lapse into the fund balance this year and allow us to recapture them for future budget years.
And was there, it's not incredibly relevant here, but there were a couple of different switches from representation from one union to another. Would you like to elaborate there just to inform us?
Sure. So the crossing guards were formerly represented by SEIU 192B, and then in the past year, they have switched their representation of their own accord to SEIU 668. That did not really impact the day-to-day workings of our employees doing the crossing guard job, but in terms of who we worked with, the SEIU business manager, that did change the negotiation parties.
Thank you. And thank you for the full explanation. I wanted to ask these questions for the purposes of sort of getting it out there for other council members to hear. Any further discussion? Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, Director. You may or may not be the right person to ask this question, but recently we had our crossing guards at the table for post-agenda, I think. And for Vision Zero, thank you, Councilwoman, for Vision Zero post-agenda. And they told us that they and the administration have unlocked a problem that has been existing since I started on council more than 10 years ago. At that time, we hadn't hired new crossing guards in 2014 for a very long time. And we were desperately in need of one in front of Arsenal, K through 5, and middle school at Butler and 40th, where 5-year-olds are trying to get to school, and there was no crossing, and the traffic patterns were increasing and changing. It was dangerous, and people were volunteering, and it was just a mess. And so we got, one new crossing guard, and we got a crossing guard assigned there. But every kind of subsequent request, it would be like, well, we're desperate for people who want to be crossing guards. But then when I found people, or other members found people who wanted to be crossing guards, it didn't work out because they couldn't be assigned in a time slot and in a location that was convenient for them. And so we just heard that this has been, through this contract negotiation, unlocked. Can you speak to that? Are you the right person? Yes, thank you, please.
So that's a great thing to bring up. One of the things we're most excited about with the crossing guard contract is we've come to terms for a new title of the neighborhood guard, a neighborhood crossing guard. And the way we've worked this out, if a full-time guard, all of the postings are bid, right? They're bid locations, and what you're referring to is occasionally you would have spots where someone hasn't bid on it, and there's not enough people to fill the spots. So what we have worked through now is if there is a space where a full-time guard has not bid on a crossing, individuals from within a neighborhood, from a hyper-local space even, if they're eligible for city employment, apply, get through, they're able to apply for a specific location. And they could kind of work that location until someone fully bids on it or something else comes up. But it's much more of it's a limited role, but it is meant to fill that need. The supervisor, Donna McManus, was at City in the Streets last night, and on her way out, she stopped me and said she has been very successful with recruiting very recently, and she's really excited about getting this out there to help people come in, like you said.
This is wonderful. So I'm going to go back and look to all of the locations that really, really needed a crossing guard, and there was someone in the neighborhood who was willing to do it. But only at that spot or nearby that spot because, again, maybe they have kids in the school system, Maybe they have other people they are caregivers for. Maybe they're retired and just don't have their own car, right? So I had people who wanted to be crossing guards but could not get across the city to some other strange, assigned location that to them, they hadn't anticipated. So this is fantastic. Like, it's transformative, right? It's for safety, for everyone who needs time and care crossing the streets, and for our busy intersections that are very frequently in my district close to things like schools, right? Or even our parks. This is tremendous news, so thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Councilwoman Cale Smith.
Thank you. I just, real briefly, first I want to thank Donna McManus. She's amazing with the crossing guards. I've known her for about 30 years. I know she lives in Councilman Coghill's district, and they do a lot of work together. So I want to thank her for her work and all the crossing guards and the city employees that do so much with so little. But I want to thank them all for their work, and I would be willing to pay them whatever we could. I'm concerned about, do we get any money from the school district for crossing guards? They used to pay for them, right?
For their day-to-day regular shifts, I'm not aware of any monies coming from the school district, no.
Yeah. But at one point, didn't they pay them? And then we just took it over one year, and then we just took it over from every year after, I think.
Since in 10 years I've been here,
Yeah, it was
we have
before you were
not,
here.
so I'd have to dig in further than that. But
Yeah.
it's a good point.
It was before you were here, but there was some kind of partnership that we, helped work with the school district. And I can look back on my files too, but I'm just wondering if the school district does anything to, especially because we're starting to keep places open later, rec centers, pools, different things, and we have crossing guards at some of those locations still throughout the summer. So I'm wondering if there's any help with the school district, especially because they have summer programs too now.
Right.
So could we just look into that?
We can look into it, sure.
Okay,
It's the
thank
school
you.
district and
I'll
also the
abstain today
private
till-
schools, charter schools. There's a lot of other types of schools that we could think about too. At my crossing in particular, it's not just Pittsburgh Public, but there's a whole wide range that Jeff crosses, and he does a great job every day.
And I feel like, our crossing guards could always, use funding, but all our employees. I mean, but I think Pittsburgh is doing better and better at paying our employees. I really do. Although they may not feel that, but I do think that we are doing better. Not that we couldn't do even better, but I just was looking, as I was looking up to see if when the school district stopped paying for the crossing guards, I saw that we are above average in paying our guards on a national level, like by 48%. So I think it may not seem like we're doing enough, but sometimes, I guess when you compare to other national levels, we're doing pretty good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Coghill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Patrick, welcome. Thanks. That's interesting. I didn't realize that. So 668 is allowing the city to go into a kind of like a separate contract with somebody. If there's no bidder on a certain busy corner, 668 is we're going into contract with a private citizen?
No, these would be city employees. They would have to move through, the regular HR checks application, PGH jobs.
But they wouldn't be 668.
They would
They
be
would be,
union
okay,
members.
right,
They would just be
okay.
a different job title classification.
Because it's just narrowed to one certain
Correct.
location.
That's correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, good question.
No, that's interesting. That's great. And Donna says recruitment's good.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Okay, I just want clarification. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 1784, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Thank you.
I'm going to abstain today just till I get the information about the school
abstention.
district.
One more thing. Same pay
Thank you.
scale?
For each of these different groups,
Yeah.
no, each one is negotiated separately based on their own needs, their own kind of wants for the next 5 years. I'll say these are all 5-year terms.
Gotcha,
And they're
gotcha.
all kind of moving based on their own industries and fields.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah, I have a quick question as I'm like, because I know someone who would be great for this. For the posting, is it just the crossing, like if you're looking for a job, is
So
it
the
just
title
crossing
would
guard?
be a different job description, a neighborhood crossing guard, as opposed to just the regular crossing guard. So it would be its own separate posting.
Okay,
I don't
so-
believe it's up yet. We have to work through the job description and the forms, but it should be soon.
But if someone is applying for the crossing guard and it's like not a fit for whatever reason, will they be directed? I don't want to lose someone because they applied to the wrong, you know what I mean?
Yes, HR can certainly help.
Okay. Can we make sure, because I know that, I know that people think crossing guard and they're going to apply for crossing guard and they're just even searching on the list, right?
We'll make sure.
Okay, thank you.
Congratulations on finalizing all of the agreements as well.
Thank you. We have, if I may, we have 3 more that we are starting up for our next round that move into 2026.
All right, moving on. Invoices. Do I have a
Thank you
motion
for your
on
work.
invoices?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of invoices, please
Aye.
indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Invoices are approved. Moves us on to P cards. Do I have a motion on P cards?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? And actually, I did not call for discussion on invoices, so chair's prerogative. If you have discussion on invoices, you can feel free to share that now, even though we already voted. Yes, is that Councilperson Charland?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I did have a question on one invoice, if that's okay.
Yes.
It's the Porla invoice. I'm curious from Parks and Rec, I'm curious what the reimbursement of the grant, it says something like that on there. I apologize, I don't have it in front of me right now. If anyone knows what that's about.
This is, would you like to call our budget director, McDevitt, to the table?
That would be great if I could.
Okay, and so to be clear, this is under Department of Parks and Recreation, the last one, Poor Law, Dick's Sporting Goods grant reimbursement for around $2,900.
I know what that one is.
I know what that one is.
Interrogatory
with Councilmember Warwick.
Yeah, sure. So Dick's Sporting Goods we all had grant money. I can't remember how much it was, but
it was 10,000 per district.
10,000 per
and it flowed
district,
through
and
Parks Rec.
Poor Law runs the Hazelwood Cobras, which is the football team, like the local community football team. So that would have been that. I assume. I'll let.
No, that's right.
Okay.
Thank you. Any further questions on this point, Councilperson?
No, thank you. If I would have realized it was Dick's Sporting Goods, I didn't know what DSG stood for, so I probably wouldn't have asked any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now on to P cards. Was there discussion on P cards? I did have a few notes from our budget director here. EMS has 2 coverage reimbursement items for Ford City Hose Company that together total over $5,000, but they were for different events, so that's been clarified. And police have 9 invoices totaling about $8,200 for McGann and Chester. They are different transactions. We are expecting to see a new contract to replace the expired contract that expired back in March. So we hope to see that soon, so that we don't see as many of these individual invoices coming through P cards. Any further discussion on P cards? Seeing none, all those in favor of P cards, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
P cards are approved. That moves us, we already covered land use and economic development, so we will now move to Innovation, Performance, Asset Management, and Technology Committee, chaired by Councilwoman Gross.
Bill 1777, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Innovation and Performance on behalf of the city of Pittsburgh to enter into an agreement or agreements and amendments thereto with Forrester Research, Inc. to provide information technology research and advisory services, total cost not to exceed $495,700 over 3 years.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Discussion? I'd like to ask for discussion for those from INP joining us today to come to the table. I have not specific questions, but this is a good amount of money. I'd like to find out a little bit more. Thank you. And thank you. If you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Hello, Heidi Norman, Director of Innovation and Performance. Sylvia Harris, Chief Information Security Officer and Assistant Director Security, Innovation and Performance.
Gwendolyn Moore, Assistant Director, Business Technology, Department of Innovation and Performance.
Thank you very much. So I see that this is $495,000, give or take, over 3 years. Can you tell us a little bit more about what this contract is for, what the research is for?
Certainly.
The
So
consultancy
this
is
is
for.
specifically research and advisory services related to information technology. As you're aware, our department covers a very broad swath of information technology, and we're responsible for keeping up to date on the best way to guide the city of Pittsburgh and to make decisions around a lot of things in IT that evolve very quickly. So we rely on a consulting firm that can do research around things like artificial intelligence, like cybersecurity, like cloud computing, things which are evolving and moving so quickly that our need to be able to consult with them to really understand how can we use, which types of technology ought we to be using, and how can we best use it for the purposes of supporting our colleagues in the city.
Mm-hmm. Have we ever engaged in or hired a consultant in this capacity in the past, this one or a different one?
Yes, we've
Okay.
had these types of consultings for I think about a decade.
We have, okay.
Yes, the money that you see here is already budgeted. We in our last RFP, Forrester did win that RFP from a different company. So this would be a re-update of the contract with Forrester that we've had for the past 3 years.
Okay, thank you. That answers my questions. Thanks. Any further discussion? Councilwoman Cale Smith.
Yeah, just how necessary is this right now, considering our city finances?
Thank you for asking. I think it's very necessary, particularly around artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. As Sylvia Harris can explain, we have recently completed our annual assessments around cybersecurity, and we are going to be spending quite a bit of time over the next year really expanding on our efforts in that area. And Forrester Research will be providing a lot of input on the best ways to do that.
You know who was the director for cybersecurity for the FBI? Our former public safety director, Wendell History.
Is
That's
that
part
right?
of his job, yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and
That's
he's still
very
in the
interesting.
area. So I'm going to abstain today. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilman Coghill?
Thank you. Okay, Wendy, excuse my ignorance when it comes to technology, but this is to protect us from what?
Being hacked.
So this is to make sure that we, the leaders of your IT department, stay up to date and educated on the evolving needs of the city and the best way to match those needs to what's happening in very fast-moving areas
So
of
it's like a
IT.
security wall for, I mean, we used to hear about that all the time. It seems like every week somebody was being blackmailed, or cities and governments were. I haven't heard about it much in the past year. Is it because of the technology, or is it because?
I'll let Sylvia explain
Sure,
what's been going
Sylvia.
on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it absolutely still has been happening.
It does. Yeah.
What happens is, when folks are hacked while the investigations are going on, they are reluctant to discuss it because of the ongoing investigation. So the hacks are still happening, pretty much at the same rate, and the biggest vector is email and people clicking. And so being able to try to get ahead of that, human risk management type of thing, that's a
It's
big
funny.
challenge.
It's funny you say that, because when we were forced to be online through COVID, I hit something, and like my chief of staff was like, "You shouldn't have hit that." And I'm like, "What do you mean I shouldn't?" I thought that was going to blow up the whole system. I really did. But so I fell victim to whatever that was. We survived. Have we been a target? Have we been hacked?
We are always a target.
History? Do you know of?
We are always a target. There have been incidents, right? There are always going to be those kind of things when people click. So what you described We
It's
would
dangerous putting me on the other end if,
we would-
if you're
we-
worried about.
we would consider that to be an incident. So
Right,
things like that.
Maybe you should like sequester me, I think, during these online meetings if we're ever forced into them again, you know.
Done.
So, okay, so
Careful
this
what you
is
wish
an
for.
ongoing issue. Again, I used to hear about it all the time. You're telling me people were just quiet about it because I guess they're compromising people's personal information, and who wants to talk about that if you're a bank or a city government or
Or
any entity.
disclosure slow.
Right, but it continues to happen. We have to continue to fight it. We're going to continue to dump money. It's technology. I guess everything's expensive. Whether it's buying
you have a police
the
chief,
software, or protecting it, right?
You have a police chief and a great force that's protecting the people and our physical assets. And here is our police chief for online in the digital world.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're talking about.
Right. And,
It is
all we
our
need is
security force.
One of you, but with money. That's all, right? So, okay, that's good. I just want kind of a better understanding. I'll support today. Again, I always say technology is expensive. It's kind of too expensive for my taste, but I still use 3x5 index cards. So,
More power to you.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further for first round? I'll just, before we move to second round. So what I'm hearing is this is like, when I think of like your doctor always has to stay up to the latest advances in medicine. They maybe go to ongoing education to learn that. But if they're so overwhelmed that they don't have the time to do that, this would be like the equivalent of them hiring someone to do that research for them to make sure that they're up on the current medicine. This is our version of that, but for like and staying up on all of the different, not just trends, but necessary information to be able to have the most secure system and to be able to understand AI and its risks and threats and benefits. Is that kind of right?
I think that's a really good metaphor. So with doctors, the American Medical Association has, lots of continuing education and reports on lots of different topics from various specialties. This type of thing is the same thing within IT.
Okay, thanks. Second round, Councilwoman Cale Smith.
Yeah, I just would like to know, did you ever take any classes or any help from Homeland Security? Have they ever come in, Homeland Security?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Because I know they offer a lot of free services.
Yeah, we're partnered with them.
Yes.
And you still think this is necessary?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right, thank you. I actually have somebody doing research, so I'll get back to you on it.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 1777, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
One abstention. Affirmative recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you.
That moves us on to our final committee of the day, Intergovernmental and Educational Affairs Committee, chaired by Councilman Mosley.
Bill 1778, resolution adopting plan revision to the City of Pittsburgh's official sewage facilities plan for 101st Avenue at no cost to the city.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 1778, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1779.
Bill 1779, resolution adopting plan revision to the City of Pittsburgh's official sewage facilities plan for 135 51st Street at no cost to the city.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 1779, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1780.
Bill 1780, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant payable in favor of Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission for the first of two installments for the 2025 annual membership dues in an amount not to exceed $48,400.50.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Southwest PA.
Discussion?
All the money that comes in. Oops, sorry.
Was there do you have a discussion on that? Okay.
I couldn't remember.
Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 1780, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Affirmative recommendation. That exhausts our standing committee's meeting and agenda.
Apologies.
We have some meeting announcements. Next week, council will hold their regular meeting on Tuesday, May 13th, and standing committees meeting on Wednesday, May 14th, both at 10 a.m. To register to speak at these meetings and hearings, please fill out the sign-up form on the council meeting webpage by the deadline. You may also call the clerk's office at 412-255-2138. Is there any discussion from members? Councilmember Warwick.
Apologies, so just on Bill 1780, just as like an FYI for council, is that at the last SPC meeting, it was discussed that these dues will be voting on whether or not to raise those dues to help with some budget issues on their side. But, so that is, at least for next year, something that may be coming down the pipe, just for people to be aware.
Thank you.
I'm going to again reiterate that I think that we need to look at the budget this year, and I think I've been talking to my colleagues about not terminating grants, but at least suspending grants that are not, the money's not allocated. And that includes money we give to developers and the URA and all that stuff, to make sure that whatever we're doing, we're stabilizing our budget, so we're not constantly coming back to the residents and nickel and diming them through some other ways, including raising fees and those sorts of things. I really think we need to start looking at some consolidation of departments too. So I think that just having those conversations is something that I can't wait to start discussing. I have some legislation coming forward to work with my colleagues. So, I know this is a difficult time now for everybody, but I think if we work together, we can get through this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from members? Okay, I will take this moment to call officially for the post-agenda hearing on, and again, we'll cancel if necessary, but I'll call for it now just so we start to find a date for it way in the future, because I know we're busy, on the emergency response, the coordinated emergency response and lessons learned from that, as well as mitigation strategies for future extreme weather events. I'll leave it at that. Is there a second?
I'll second it. What I heard you describing earlier today was a lot of the conversation that we had yesterday.
Correct.
So I would just encourage you and Councilman Warwick to
Yes.
have a conversation. I think you all are on the same page, but
I think so too, and I apologize for missing the meeting
No,
yesterday. I'd like to discuss, and then, like I said, I'll cancel if necessary or change the focus if necessary. But I do think it warrants two different discussions.
Yeah, I do too. So just to be clear, like the discussion I'm hoping to have really is about the electric grid and the situation. You know what I mean, with the state of our electric grid and what the long term, which I assume is like put it underground. That seems to be, but which is right, like that's a giant undertaking, and like what do we need to do to, and then also just general preparedness around Duquesne Light and whatnot. So and I think that's a different,
Those
like
are
Duquesne
separate.
Light
Yeah,
versus
those are
the
separate.
city's general emergency response for any kind of disaster, I think are two separate conversations.
great.
Yeah.
Can I just say, one of the things you mentioned was that this is the time, like maybe we could have underground some of our utilities. And I think that's so important because residents are asking for that all over the city. And I think that that's just is a really good point, and I would love for us to be able to really hone in on that a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. There are challenges even when they are buried, and some of our residents that had buried lines also experienced a power outage this time. So, just say that. But maybe, but let's discuss. Look forward to that discussion. Okay, so can I get is there a second on?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of the described post agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Right. Anything further from members? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes and adjourn the meeting?
So move.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.